4 windmills. Their rotors pull energy from the steady Pacific winds. It's a more and more common sight as green energy comes of age in the 21st century. But this wind farm is different from any other. For one, their number. 4 turbines would never turn a meaningful profit for a power company. And their location, straight out on the coastline of Washington State, an area so far untouched by commercial wind energy, hundreds of miles from any other wind farm. But the biggest difference lies in what they really produce. Not electricity, not money. These windmills generate hope. To understand how machines that make electricity can change the lives of an entire community, we need to turn to the agency that owns and operates them, Coastal Community Action Program. CCAP in Aberdeen administers local, state, and federal programs in Grays Harbor and Pacific counties for low-income, elderly, and disabled citizens. It is one of the many nonprofit community action agencies that began in the 60s during the Johnson-era administration's War on Poverty. There are 1,100 CAPs nationwide, 30 in Washington State. CAP's funding comes from many different government and private agencies. Its budget runs about $7.5 million a year. Its key programs include energy assistance, employment programs, in-home care, transportation programs, home-delivered meals, housing programs, emergency shelter, home weatherization, and emergency food programs. The 2 counties it serves have some of the highest unemployment rates in Washington State. For its clients, CAP is often a place of last resort.
That's what the long term of this project's about, is helping those folks. They need, and I'll tell you what, they don't want much. I mean, people with disabilities, youth, low-income seniors, they really don't want much. They just don't want to spend every nickel they got heating their house during the wintertime, or worried about whether, do I get my medication or am I going to eat today? And it's the truth.
Those programs, some are done on a per diem basis, some are done on, most of them are done on a reimbursable basis. So we spend the money and then we get reimbursed from the state. Sometimes it's federal money that flows through the state, and that money quite often has a lot of strings attached to it.
Grants are here today and gone tomorrow, and they change what they're focused on from time to time. And we also turn people away every day here, and people that we want to help but cannot help. They don't fall into the right category to match a grant. They don't. They make $1 over the limit that's allowed, and we just can't help them sometimes. And so there are people that we turn away every day, and over time there's been people that we know we could have helped a lot more. And so we start looking at what can we do to bring in additional revenues into the area.
There was a suggestion that for our clients that receive low-income home energy assistance program dollars, could we put the small turbines, about that big, on top of their houses in order to generate some power and reduce their bills instead of laying out that cash. We explored that as an agency, and it was impractical, but from that grew the idea of doing the large-scale wind project.
CAP's Chief Financial Officer, Craig Dublanco, worked with the idea for a couple of years. In 2002, he took it to the Grays Harbor PUD. He proposed a program to help low-income families by generating revenue with a large wind turbine.
So they would generate electricity and kind of build a kilowatt-hour credit with us that he could then apply to bills for low-income residents, people who had trouble paying their bills. For a variety of reasons, that doesn't really work for the utility. So we weren't really interested in banking the electrons, but I told them we might be interested in purchasing the output.
CAP applied for a REACH grant to study the idea further and bought a wind test tower. They spent the next year or so looking for good wind along the North County shoreline before they turned their attention to the quiet town of Grayland. Grayland, Washington has a population of less than 1,000. Most of its residents are seasonal. They enjoy the beaches in the summer and spend winters elsewhere. Grayland is a quiet place. It's mostly known for beach cabins and cranberry farms. But a local landowner was willing to grant them land on the perfect ridge above the shoreline, and the test towers there finally gave CAP the wind numbers they were looking for.
Our 2 test towers had been up for a couple years, so we had the data. We had a marketing plan and a business plan. We'd had the data professionally crunched, and we knew we could make those big giant wind turbines work. We had secured a long-term lease of the ground that our turbines are on. So we had the data to prove it could be done. We had the site locked up. We had people that clearly were willing to go through this and get it done. And one day I was meeting with Senator Jim Hargrove, a very great man in our community. And at the end of my list, I said, oh, and we've also got this wind energy project. Well, I know I've mentioned it to him before, but you know, this time everything lined up just perfectly. And he said, what is the wind energy project? So I told him, well, you know, at that point in time, the green power production tax credits were on. Everybody was looking at alternative energy. Everybody was looking at ways of funding a social service agency or figuring out how to do it because money was tight. And before he left my office that day, he had Craig up here and he was literally on the phone writing legislation to get us $5 million from the state.
A lot of politics is timing, basically. And at that point in time in 2007, our budget was not real bad. Our budget, you know, was pretty normal. And my analysis just from that brief conversation was that they had done an awful lot of preparation work, and this was something that had a legitimate shot at going forward.
I-937, which was an initiative that allowed for a portfolio standard with the utilities in the state of Washington, which gave favorable pricing to wind power. And so our project became all the more feasible at that point. Early to mid 2007, probably May-ish, we got the budget out. And in the budget, there was $5 million for the Grays Harbor Wind Project. And that was an amazing day, frankly. It was unbelievable.
We wanted to buy American. We had $5 million of taxpayer money involved in it. So we wanted to make sure that we bought American, and ultimately we were able to buy General Electric, which is an American turbine.
One of the things that I appreciated is that they outreach to the community, and he shared with me about coastal energy and what they do. And because of that, he basically got my attention because of volunteerism, because I've been involved with GE volunteers. I've been the president of our volunteer organization in the Northwest, and when he started sharing about that, then we started understanding each other, and then I said, hey, this sounds like a great idea, and we started talking.
GE was spectacular. Every time they could, they gave us whatever we needed to understand what was going on. They helped us through all their manuals. They were a great partner, and we are so glad we have General Electric turbines. They are a spectacular company, and they have treated us so well.
CAP's board elected to expand the wind farm so it would generate as much revenue as possible. The Grayland Bluff was big enough for 4 turbines. A farm that size could bring in $500,000 every year for the next 20 years. But it would cost over $15 million to set up. To get the most out of its efforts, CAP would have to expand its financial backing.
That was the beginning of what ended up being an extremely complex finance package that ended up being the first of its kind. I think is maybe as novel as the project itself. It's a very, very cool finance package. I think we did great things from a finance side as well as a project side. But what we, in essence, were talking about was taking the $5 million from the state of Washington, the renewable energy tax credits that come with the deal, as well as a new market tax credit, and bringing all 3 to the table in the same wind deal. And that was very favorable. And we're actually taking that state grant and leveraging it to get more tax credits. And so we kind of got a double bonus on the state grant. So really worked out nicely. The problem is nobody had tried it before. So we weren't sure exactly how to make it happen, but we thought we'd give it a try.
By a coincidence of geography, the wind farm straddled the border between Grays Harbor and Pacific counties. 2 turbines would sit in each county. CCAP needed to get permits for the construction. They also needed to work out the environmental concerns. Residents along Washington's coastline have always been protective of its ecosystem. CCAP started bringing their message to local residents from the start.
You have to do something about alternative energy, and this is just a little tiny thing, but it's a heck of a start. You know what I mean? We're just a little community of 900 people, and here's 4 turbines producing energy going back into the grid that's going to help people. So we decided we would get the community together and have a meeting.
We were really worried a little bit about how the wind project would be the people that live in Grayland. You know, all these big towers are going up. What are they going to think on the deal? And a lot of people from our environmental community live in those Westport areas, so they were very conscious about what was going on. So we were worried about that first meeting. We walked away, they're going like, they just loved it. They loved the idea of alternative power. They understood it was in their deal. They knew they were going to be big and they're going to be up on the hill.
And that was important. The community felt involved. And I think just the nature of the agency helped people accept it.
Yeah, it was much different than, say, somebody looking at putting in a commercial operation. And I think a lot of the concerns in the community is what the effect would be of, say, a development, real estate development, this sort of thing. So this probably has a lot lower impact as far as how it affects the lifestyle within the community itself.
We had a public meeting out at Grayland that was very well attended. We had overwhelming support for this project. We went and met early on with the local Audubon because we wanted to get their input on wind projects, and I think in that meeting, we shared our heart and what we wanted to do, and they, I think, overall liked the project.
They actually came up with the idea to make this a pilot project because there were other projects proposed out here, but nobody really knew the environmental impacts of avian mortality and all that on wind turbines in a coastal environment, in coastal Washington. These birds are unique to our area, and nobody knew how they would interact. And they said, we don't know. We'd much rather know with 4 turbines than 40 or 50. And began to form this strategy of a pilot project so that we can not only help low-income families with this project, but maybe help renewable energy development in the future in coastal Washington and western Washington.
CCAP now had a green light to build from the county, state, and environmental agencies. They signed a purchase agreement with General Electric for 4 1.5 megawatt wind turbines. Now they needed to find a way to make the financing work. In 2008 and 9, CCAP spent thousands of man-hours working out the unique finance package with its banking partners. It leveraged $15 million construction dollars out of the state's initial 5 and allowed CCAP to own the turbines outright with no debt. The finished paperwork was tens of thousands of pages long and needed thousands of signatures. But the complex financing pushed the start date into December. Coastal weather makes it impossible to start construction that time of year. CCAP stood to lose the financing if the groundwork didn't start on time. A contractor saved the schedule by volunteering to work before CCAP had the financing finished. They started early without a contract to clear the site and improve access roads before winter shut them down. The foundation crew arrived in February 2010. They started construction on the 4 foundations that anchor the towers to the bluff. workers prepared a massive construction crane used to raise the towers. A crane so large, they need a second crane to assemble it. And finally, in March, almost 10 years after the wind energy idea was first proposed, General Electric started trucking in parts for 4 wind turbines.
It's been an amazing thing from the day the first piece of equipment showed up to just kind of shocked the county, made all the newspapers, and because these are big giant things and they're coming in on big giant trucks. And photo ops for everybody. Everybody was really out taking the pictures. But it may be that the most valuable rewards of the Coastal Energy Project are the things that CAP has learned along the way.
We don't have to do wind energy. What we have is we have a finance package that can help other agencies or ourselves branch out from traditional stuff that can send money back in and help their agency. And we can go just about anywhere and do another project if we want. It doesn't have to be wind, could be solar, could be something not in the energy field. But we can be creative, and I think that CAP wants to be creative going forward, and hopefully we'll be able to do more creative things.
This kind of a project will provide us the money for that operating base to kind of be the foundation that the rest of the programs can be built on. We won't have to borrow so much money, even though it's rolling and we're paying it back each month. It still rolls and it still costs money. The money you don't have to pay in interest can be put back into the programs and provide more services.
It's the first one of its kind of a model, a financial model between a nonprofit and the government agencies to try to build an energy deal. The CAP program is one of the anchor programs in doing that, and it just goes about its business.
There were 2 other wind projects that are under study. One is out in the water, and it's a different system than what we're using. And that made headlines. And then there's one south of us that's a big one, and that one's made headlines. And people confuse us with those because they hear about us and they're like, well, how are you guys this one? No, we're not. Are you that one? No, we're not. How come I've never heard you? Because we don't talk about it. It's not our heart to brag about this thing. It's just something we're doing. It's a social service program that happens to generate revenue through wind. And we want it to be something the community wanted. We want it to be something that is good for the environment and generates revenues. And I think we got the best of both worlds here.
This wind farm for the CAP agencies was one of those where there was a lot of preparation done ahead of time. They had measured the wind, so we weren't just going in and asking for the state to give them money hoping that there was enough wind there to run it. They'd actually done a really good analysis of the wind generating capabilities of the site they were looking at. They had done a lot of information, a lot of research to determine how much the energy might sell for, whether it would pencil out to actually build these things and still have enough to actually make a profit so that they could support their programs.
We will be the first in the nation to use the new market tax credit and the wind energy tax credit together. We will be the first in the nation to use wind energy to fund low-income home energy and other programs, and we will be the first to be in Western Washington to do wind power and to partner with State Fish and Wildlife in the way that we're doing. So there are several unique and first aspects about this project.
I think everybody likes the fact that we have these huge turbines. They're cool to look at. They're fun to be around. They're neat. They're space age. They're just neat items. Everybody likes to peek inside and all that. That's cool. The press coverage and all that's great. But really, if you get down to it, CAP's all about helping people. And a lot of people see this as a renewable energy project. We don't. We see it as a social service project that just happens to use renewable energy.
Now the wind energy project, our money that we can decide where we want to put those dollars. We don't have the limitations of a grant guidelines. We do have limitations of who we are. I mean, we can't spend it on certain things. We can. It's for programs. That's why the legislature approved $5 million for us, it's for programs.
This is one of those things that you can point to and go, you know what, we helped establish the money to help take care of other people, and that's a good. And there aren't very many of the good, ultimate good things that no matter what you do, no matter what it is, whatever happens, this is a good thing.
To bring it together from a nonprofit perspective and walk it through where this revenue stream is going back into CCAP for their use to the public, I just think is fantastic.
And it was really good to see somebody like Craig that's thinking in those terms, ways that the government could do something that takes a little bit of a burden off the taxpayers, and we all know what that burden is now.
I personally, I hope that it succeeds the way they have planned and worked so hard for, and that they do in fact generate the income that they're looking for, because I think it's wonderful for nonprofits to be able to have a reliable source of income, and so that's my hope that it does work out that way.
We're all members of this community. We're a community-owned utility. CAP is an organization that helps in the community. And so we've always thought it would be good if we could purchase the power from them.
As far as it affecting us personally, you know, at times we can hear the towers, but our feeling, even going into the project, was that any discomfort we feel that's pretty minimal compared to the people who are trying to help.
I just can't say enough about the people that have been involved in this and the risk that they've been willing to take, from the board through the bankers to our financial people, to legislature and Senator Hargrove, to staff who've had to put up with this dream that's gotten in the way at times of other things happening, because we're so focused on it's taken so much time. And it's just been one big kind of mutual agreement of people to let's just get it done. And I just can't say enough about how proud I am even to just be a part of it.
Thank you through all this, and your staff, Heidi Hull, who couldn't be here today.
Financial, I probably just wouldn't understand a bit of it, but I know it went on. I know hard work happened.
Absolutely. Ready? We're ready. Here we go. One, two, three. Here we go. Button is pushed. Here we go. It's going to ramp up. You can tell we're generating power. We are generating power now.
It took 10 years to bring the Coastal Energy Project from an idea to reality. It is a testament to creativity, cooperation, and the unending pursuit of a dream. CAP continues to work with the grants and programs that will help the most needy in their area. Thanks to the Grayland Wind Farm, they know that a little more of their future is in their hands now.
Throughout the project, we have kept our focus on the reason we're building the windmills. The Community Action Program exists to serve seniors, low-income, and disabled residents in Grace Harbor and Pacific counties. The windmills will generate money for food, energy, and housing assistance, for job training, for medical transportation, for in-home care, and a lot of other programs that we operate. We've got a lot of unmet needs and long waiting lists, and this will generate some money to help meet some of those needs, but we'll stay focused on that until we meet all of the needs.